That night, everything felt off. The air was too still, like the whole world had taken a deep breath and was holding it, waiting. I didn't notice it at first. I was just sitting in my apartment, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, half watching some show I wasn't even interested in. But then, I felt it. A shift. Like something had clicked into place, or maybe out of place. I don't know how to explain it, but my stomach twisted, like my body knew something was wrong before my brain did. Then my phone vibrated, just once, no notification, no message, just a silent buzz against the table, like it was trying to get my attention without actually telling me anything. I picked it up, expecting some spam message or an update I didn't care about, but there was nothing. No missed calls, no alerts, just nothing. But that wasn't the weird part. The weird part was that my TV had frozen. The show I was barely watching was stuck on a single frame, the audio stretched into this low, warped hum, like a record being played at the wrong speed. I grabbed the remote and tried to turn it off, but it didn't work. Even unplugging the damn thing didn't do anything. The screen just stayed frozen, that same eerie frame staring back at me. And then, the power in my entire apartment flickered. Not a full outage, just a flicker, like someone had tampered with the switch at the source. And that's when I heard it. Not a sound, exactly. More like the absence of sound. A pressure, pushing in on my ears, making everything feel too quiet, too distant. Even my own breathing sounded muffled. I opened my window, expecting to hear the usual late-night city noise, sirens, cars, people, but there was nothing. The streets below were empty. No headlights, no movement, just an eerie, unnatural stillness stretching across the entire city. I didn't know it yet, but at that exact moment, every single person in the country was supposed to be receiving an emergency alert, a message meant to warn us, to prepare us. But somehow, none of us ever got it. I stepped away from the window, my heart pounding in my chest. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones, that deep, instinctive fear that tells you to run, even when you don't know why. I grabbed my phone again, checking the news, social media, anything that might explain the eerie silence outside. Nothing. No breaking news, no trending hashtags. Just the same usual garbage. People posting selfies, stupid memes, random updates about their lives like everything was normal. But it wasn't normal. I knew that. Then, out of nowhere, my phone screen glitched. Just for a second. A flicker, a distortion, like an old VHS tape warping for a brief moment. Then it went back to normal. But in that split second, I saw something, some kind of text, a message that wasn't there before. Do not look outside. I froze, staring at my screen. The message was gone now, replaced by my home screen, but I knew I wasn't imagining it. My breathing was shallow, my pulse hammering in my ears. And then, the sound started. A low, humming noise vibrating through my walls, through my skull. It wasn't coming from any specific direction. It was just there, filling the space around me like the air itself was vibrating. My chest felt tight, my head light. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the couch to steady myself. The TV, still frozen, still stuck on that single distorted frame, suddenly flickered to black. Then white noise. And through the static, I swore I saw something shifting, moving just beyond the interference. A shape, a figure. But I couldn't make it out. I grabbed the remote again, frantically pressing buttons. Nothing. The static grew louder. The screen flickered, and for a split second, an image flashed across it. A news anchor, sitting stiffly at a desk, his face pale, eyes wide. His mouth moved, but there was no sound. And behind him, just barely visible, something loomed in the shadows. The image cut out immediately. The screen went black, and my phone vibrated again. This time there was a message, no sender, just one line of text. Stay inside. Do not respond. I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. My hands trembled as I gripped my phone, staring at that message. It didn't make sense. It wasn't from any app, no notification sound, no number. Just those 5 words glowing against the darkness of my apartment. I tried to call someone, anyone. My friend Jake, my sister, even 911. But no calls would go through. Just silence. Not even a dial tone. Just nothing. Like my phone had disconnected from reality itself. The humming outside grew louder. I stepped toward the window, my body moving on its own despite the warning I had just read. The city was still there, the buildings, the streetlights, but something was off. The usual glow of neon signs and headlights felt dim, like a faded photograph, the colors bleeding out. And then I saw something that made my stomach drop. The streetlights were flickering, but not randomly. They were blinking in a pattern, 3 quick flashes, a pause, 3 more, over and over again, like a signal, like they were trying to say something. Then I saw movement. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow shifting near the corner of the street, barely visible, but then another, and another. People, or at least they looked like people, standing completely still in the distance, facing my building. Their heads tilted slightly, as if listening, as if they knew I was watching. I stumbled back from the window, my breath caught in my throat. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Do not make noise. I clamped my hand over my mouth, heart hammering. Then I heard the sound of a door opening somewhere in my building, a slow creaking hinge echoing through the silence, and then footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming up the stairs. I wasn't alone. I stood frozen, every muscle in my body locked in place. The footsteps were slow, too slow, like whoever was coming up the stairs wanted me to hear them. I turned off my phone screen, afraid even the faint glow might give me away. My apartment was silent except for the muffled hum outside and the rhythmic, deliberate sound of shoes dragging across the hallway floor. Shh! Thump! Shh! Thump! Whoever it was, they weren't in a hurry. They were taking their time. I crept toward my door, moving as quietly as I could. Pressed my ear against the wood. The footsteps had stopped. Right outside my door. I felt a chill run through my spine. A long pause, no movement. Just silence. Then, 3 slow knocks, not loud, not urgent, just patient. Knock, knock, knock. I backed away, my breath shallow, my body screaming at me to stay still. I didn't know who, or what, was on the other side. My phone buzzed again. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I hesitated before glancing at the screen. Do not open it! I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to breathe evenly. My door didn't have a peephole, so I had no way of seeing who was outside, but I could feel them, just standing there, waiting. Then, the handle twitched, not turning, not rattling, just a small, subtle twitch, like someone was testing to see if it was locked. I stepped back even further, my mind racing. My windows were too high up to jump. The fire escape was in the living room, but if I moved, they'd hear me. Then, the knocking started again. Louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. And then, a voice. It didn't sound human. We know you're in there. Not a question, a statement. I clenched my fists, my back against the wall. My phone buzzed again. My hands were shaking as I looked. Do not reply. Do not move. I held my breath. The handle twitched again. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the knocking stopped. The footsteps slowly moved away from my door, back down the hallway, fading, until they were gone. I didn't move. Not for a long time. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. This time it just said, check your TV. I didn't want to. Every part of me was screaming, don't look, but I knew I had no choice. My TV had been black ever since the signal cut out, but now it was on. The screen was dim, barely visible, showing a grainy, distorted image. I stepped closer, my pulse hammering against my ribs. It was my apartment building, a live feed. The camera angle was from above, like a surveillance camera looking down at the entrance. The doors to the lobby were wide open, swinging slightly as if they had just been used. but there was no one there. Just the flickering streetlights and the empty road beyond. And then, movement. A figure stepped into view. At first, I thought it was a person, but the way it moved, slow, unnatural, too smooth, it wasn't right. It stepped into the lobby, pausing just beneath the camera, and then it looked up, right into the lens. My stomach dropped. I couldn't see its face, just darkness where its features should be. But I felt it staring at me, like it somehow knew I was watching. Then my phone buzzed again. Do not turn away. I was shaking now, my entire body screaming to run, to hide. But I kept my eyes locked on the screen. The figure stood there for what felt like forever. Then slowly, it reached up, raising one hand toward the camera. No, not the camera, me. It lifted a single finger and pointed, directly at the screen, directly at me. And then, the TV cut to black. Silence. I backed away, my breath ragged. My phone buzzed once more. It sees you. I dropped the phone. A sound outside. Not footsteps. Something worse. A deep, wet scraping noise, like something heavy being dragged across concrete, coming from the hallway, coming closer. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. That horrible, wet scraping sound was getting closer, dragging along the hallway floor just outside my door. I had no idea what was out there. I didn't want to know. My entire body was locked in place, frozen with fear. Then, tap, tap, tap. Not a knock this time. Something lighter, almost testing, like fingertips brushing against the door. I backed away slowly, pressing myself against the opposite wall, my eyes locked on the door handle. My phone was still lying on the floor where I'd dropped it, the screen dim but still on. I forced myself to look down, barely moving, just enough to see the last message. Do not make a sound. I clamped a hand over my mouth, swallowing down the panic rising in my throat. Then the handle moved. Not just a twitch this time. It was turning. I couldn't breathe. The lock held. The door didn't open, but whoever, or whatever, was on the other side wasn't going away. The tapping started again, softer this time, almost playful. Then, through the silence, I heard something worse. A whisper, low, garbled, just on the other side of the door. We already came inside. My blood turned to ice. No, that wasn't possible. The door was locked. It was outside. Right? Then why? Why did I hear something breathing behind me? A cold rush of air tickled the back of my neck. My stomach twisted in terror. I didn't want to turn around. I couldn't turn around, but I had to. I turned my head inch by inch, every nerve in my body screaming at me to stop. The air behind me felt heavier, colder, wrong. But there was nothing there. My apartment was empty. The door was still locked. The windows were shut. I was alone. Or at least, I thought I was. Then my TV turned on again. No sound, just a black screen at first, then static. Then, a live feed of my apartment. Of me. I was watching myself on the screen, sitting exactly where I was, staring at the TV. It was an exact mirror of reality, until it wasn't. The version of me on the screen twitched. I didn't move, but it did. Its head turned toward the camera, toward me. And then it smiled, a slow, unnatural grin stretching too wide across its face. My stomach lurched. I clutched the arm of the couch, trying to steady myself, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Then, on the TV, my reflection stood up. I did not stand up. It was moving on its own now, stepping closer to the camera, closer to me. Then, it reached down and picked up something from the floor. My phone, the same phone still lying beside me. And then, it raised a hand and knocked on the inside of the screen. A hollow, distorted knock. 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 I scrambled backward, my mind spinning. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. My phone vibrated again. A new message. Do not let it out. The thing on the screen pressed its hand flat against the glass, and then, slowly, I saw its fingers start to push through. I scrambled off the couch so fast I nearly tripped over my own feet. My back hit the wall, my chest heaving. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. The fingers pressed through the glass like it was water, stretching, bending unnaturally as they pushed further into my apartment. They were my fingers, but wrong. Too long, too pale. The nails blackened like something rotten. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. Another message appeared before I could even think about what to do next. Turn off the TV. I lunged forward, my arm outstretched toward the power button. Too late. The hand was through, then the wrist, then the arm. The thing kept emerging, peeling itself from the screen inch by inch. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, like a puppet with tangled strings. My stomach twisted as I saw more of it, more of me, step out. It looked like me. Same clothes, same face. But the eyes, they weren't right. They were empty, black voids, too deep, too hollow. And then it smiled again. A slow, unnatural grin that stretched wider than humanly possible. My breath caught in my throat. It stepped forward. I stepped back. My phone buzzed. Do not speak. I clamped a hand over my mouth. The thing tilted its head, still grinning, watching me with those empty, soulless eyes. Then, in a perfect mimic of my own voice, it whispered, "You let me out." I shook my head frantically, my fingers tightening around my phone. The thing took another step, then another. Its movements were slow, deliberate, savoring the moment, like a predator playing with its food. My mind screamed at me to do something, but I was frozen. Then my phone buzzed again, and I barely managed to tear my eyes away from the thing wearing my face. One more message. "Do not let it touch you." And that's when it lunged. I barely had time to react. The thing that looked like me lunged, its arms outstretched, fingers clawing at the air between us. I dove to the side, barely dodging as it crashed into the couch. The force of it knocked the furniture back a few inches, but the thing barely seemed fazed. It twisted its head toward me, grinning, moving in that jerky, unnatural way. My mind was racing. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I needed to end this. The TV. I scrambled toward it, nearly slipping in my panic. The thing must have realized what I was doing because it let out a sound, a distorted, gurgling laugh, before lunging again. I slammed my hand down on the power button. The screen went black. For a second, everything was silent. Then, a blood-curdling screech. The thing convulsed, its limbs jerking violently. Its smile finally broke, twisting into something even worse. Pure, unfiltered rage. Its body flickered, glitching like a corrupted video file. Its skin cracked, deep black fissures running up its arms, its neck, its face. It wasn't supposed to be here. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I bolted. I ran straight to my front door, yanking it open so hard it slammed against the wall. The hallway was dark, eerily quiet, except for the humming sound, still vibrating through the air. I didn't care. I just ran. Down the hall, down the stairs, my breath ragged, my legs screaming. The building felt wrong, like it was stretching, twisting around me. Doors that weren't supposed to be there, hallways that seemed longer than before, shadows shifting in the corners of my vision. I made it to the lobby, stopped dead in my tracks. The glass doors were gone, not shattered, not broken, just gone, like they had never been there at all. Outside, the street was empty, no cars, no people, just rows of flickering streetlights blinking in that same unnatural pattern. 3 flashes. A pause, 3 more. I turned, desperate, my breath ragged, and then I saw them, the figures, lined up outside, dozens, maybe hundreds, standing perfectly still, watching me, their heads tilted slightly, as if listening, as if waiting, and then all at once, they started walking toward me. I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat. The figures outside weren't running, they weren't rushing, they just walked, in perfect unison, all moving toward the building with slow, deliberate steps. I turned, ready to run back upstairs, but I stopped myself. That thing, the thing that looked like me, was still up there, and I wasn't sure if turning off the TV had actually stopped it. I was trapped. My phone buzzed. I nearly dropped it from how bad my hands were shaking. Another message. Do not let them in. I turned toward the missing glass doors, my heart slamming against my ribs. The figures were closer now. I could see them more clearly. They looked human, at least at first, but there was something off. Their faces were too smooth, like wax figures that had been left in the sun too long. Their eyes were sunken, dark, completely void of emotion. And they were all smiling, the same wide, too-stretched grin. Then, as one, they stopped. They were standing right at the edge of the lobby, where the doors should have been. But they didn't step inside. I realized, with a sickening twist in my gut, that it was as if the doors were still there for them, like something unseen was keeping them out. For now. One of them, a tall man in a torn hoodie, tilted his head even further, almost unnaturally so. Then he raised a hand and knocked, his knuckles rapping against nothing but air. Knock, knock, knock. I swallowed hard. My phone buzzed again. Do not speak. Do not move. I stayed perfectly still. They kept knocking. All of them. One by one, their hands lifted and tapped against the invisible barrier. The sound was soft at first, but then it grew. Knock, knock, knock. Louder. Knock, knock, knock. Faster. The sound filled the entire lobby, bouncing off the walls, pressing into my skull. I clenched my jaw so tightly it ached, forcing myself to stay frozen. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the knocking stopped. Silence. I didn't dare move. Then the man in the hoodie pressed his hand flat against the invisible barrier, his smile stretching even wider, and he spoke, not with his mouth, with mine. Let us in. It was my voice, perfectly replicated. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. He knocked again. Let us in. And then, behind me, upstairs, I heard a door creak open. I wasn't alone, not anymore. Not